All right, we are live, day 405. Today we got a creative finance deal, and this is a subject to deal. So a subject to deal is when you are buying a property subject to the existing financing. You are taking ownership of the property, but you are taking over the payments on the underlying loan. So different from your typical strategy of taking a loan out to buy another property, and then that seller takes the proceeds from that sale and then pays off the underlying loan. This scenario is more popular because, well, you typically are able to get an interest rate that's a little bit lower. And in this scenario, this is 170 Cokesdale Road, Columbia, South Carolina, 29212. Purchase price $264. Interest rate of 5.62. I'm just going to start writing these down, and just as I get these, so I'll put in the rehab later. The interest rate is 5.62%. So I want to come over here, put 5.62%. Entry fee 16,411. So let's see what that's made up of. $6,411 to the seller. 6,411 to the seller, and a $10,000 assignment fee. So you might be wondering, hey, why would someone sell their property like this? And typically it's because, well, you see how there's only about $16,000 of cash being exchanged, or more importantly, only $6,000 that's going to the seller. Chances are, if they sold it on the market after all their realtor fees, etc., they might be losing money, right? So that's why the value in this deal is actually in the underlying loan with a lower interest rate. So you can kind of see right here that the PITI is $1,790 plus $3 HOA. So your total monthly payment is $1,793. So I need to go find out what my underlying mortgage is. $247. Great. So $247,589 is the underlying loan, and you can see it's a VA loan. So that tells me a couple of things. One is typically VA loans, you can buy a property with essentially 0% down because the federal government is insuring the loan or a piece of it. So that's why they're able to do such a low down payment as one of the benefits of being a VA. All right, maturity is 6/1/52, so it was started in 30 years ago in 22. Great. So now that I got my total monthly payment number here, I'm going to go to my property tax number in B28, and I'm going to take the $1,793, the disclosed payment number equals $1,793, and I'm going to subtract the principal portion and the interest portion of the subject to loan that I'm taking over the payments for. This gives me a balance of about roughly $368.52. Now, for my insurance, right, this $368, it already includes my property taxes and my insurance. So that's why when I add this extra $30 in here, well, that's accounting for me turning the property into an investment property. Okay. When I turn that into an investment property, typically insurance companies view this asset as a riskier asset. So they're going to charge me more money in the form of premium. So that's why I'm adding extra $30 here. Okay. I got 10% set aside for my maintenance. I got 10% set aside for property management fees. And I got 5% set aside for my vacancy, right? This maintenance is very important. This is money not only for ongoing repairs, but also for future repairs, especially if you think about it, you're going to replace that roof at some point, 10, 15 years down the road, right? You don't want to overestimate your profitability because you underestimate your expenses, right? If you get a bill for a roof replacement for $13,000 in 100 months from now, and you didn't set aside $137 every single month, you might realize this extra $137 that you thought you were making every single month has now disappeared. So don't be that person. Please be wise. So interesting enough here, it says that the long-term rental rate is $19.50. So I'm going to look up the rents two ways. The first one I'm going to look up is I'm going to look up the rent on affordablehousing.com because I'm looking up for Section 8 purposes only. And I'm going to plug in the address and plug in the bedroom count, and you're going to see that the average rent for 3 bedrooms within a 1.4 mile radius is actually only $1,736. So this tells me 1736, 1639, 1540, and 1522. That's a 1.4 mile radius. Now, my payment standards here You can look this up specifically in Colombia. So if this is going to be rented under the Colombia Housing Authority, right? You can see that the payment standards for 3 bedrooms is $1,595, and then they actually go above 120% of the HUD FMR. So this tells you that, hey, if this includes utilities, your maximum rent is about $1,914, which kind of makes sense, right? If you set aside just $200, so $1,914 compared to the market rent of $1,736, it's probably about $200 utilities. So I feel really good about using $1,736, $1,914. I'm just going to write this stuff down. 1914, 2300. Colombia SC payment standards. It's a 4-bedroom and 3-bedroom. I'm just writing all these numbers down since my partners already know how I analyze deals. So it's very easy for them to kind of pick apart how I look at these deals. So using 1736 as a rent, right? 1736, you're going to realize that this property, even though it's a subject to deal, you're going to be negative cash flow $521, right? You might be tempted to think, oh, my rent is $1736. Obviously, this person that's advertising wants to put in a better light. Yeah, could it get $1950? Sure, it could. But I want to be a little bit more conservative. And if I see that the market rent is $1736 and I'm using it for Section 8 purposes, I'm going to use the lower rent because that seems to be the more reasonable rent. And this is what I mean by reasonable, okay? If you go to the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook, HCV, and you go to Section 2.2, right? HCV is what was previously known as the Section 8 program. They rebranded it from Section 8 to Housing Choice Voucher, specifically because they had to get away from all the negative connotations associated with Section 8. So that's why it's called a Housing Choice Voucher now. And the Housing Choice Voucher subsidy goes with the tenant. So wherever they move, it goes with them. All right. So in Section 2.2, it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA, or the Public Housing Authority, in this scenario would be the Columbia, South Carolina Housing Authority, must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So obviously size, unit type matters, but if I were to look at the market rent that I just got from affordablehousing.com, I mean, 1.4 miles, that's a pretty close radius, and these are all 25 units, right? Obviously, you want to make sure that, hey, this home is a single family home, and you want to make sure it's comparing rents against single family homes and not necessarily apartments specifically. Now, this home, I mean, could you do some paint jobs on it? Yeah, but I'm not going to overthink it. It seems like it's in a livable condition. So I'm just going to keep my rehab as is, because at the end of the day, this property, even as is going to be losing money on a cash flow basis. And that's not a deal for me personally, right? Especially adding like 2.5% for closing costs. And this would be a negative 23% cash and cash return. Just with that, it's only going to get worse the more money you invest into it, especially you got to do a paint job and some floor jobs too. All right. So hopefully this was helpful, everybody. This is why we do this every single day. If you guys want a copy of the spreadsheet, you guys can go to affordablehousing.io. Go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, affordablehousing.io, not .com. Put your name, your email, your phone number. That's the fastest way to get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I modified it, tweaked it so that I can analyze these deals a lot faster. And that's it, right? I hope you copy my homework today. Look at the same deal I looked at today. Same address, same terms, use the same spreadsheet, and put it on your own YouTube channel. Because this is the only way you can get the practice, the reps to figure out, hey, when the deal comes across the table and slaps you across the face, can you recognize that as a deal? I hope so. All right. Hope you all have an amazing Saturday. Hope you all will spend some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 406. Have a good one, everybody.